think everyone's here. Thank you for joining RJ Julia Booksellers and Bookhampton today for our virtual event with John Grisham. We sure are excited to have him with us today. I'm just going to give a few housekeeping details before we get started. You are muted. You will remain muted, so that's not an accident. We are going to be muted the whole time today. If you'd like your optimal viewing, you want to be in speaker view. It's in the top right corner of your Zoom screen. Select that so that the author's highlighted on your screen. Please ask questions in the chat box function of your Zoom screen. We'll get to as many as possible. I'll be monitoring the chat box throughout the event, so send your questions to me. If at any time you drop off the Zoom or experience technical difficulties, just click the link again and I'll readmit you. And don't forget, most importantly, purchase a copy of Camino Winds from rjjulia.com or bookhampton.com. And while supplies last, we do have signed copies. So without further ado, please welcome the owner of RJ Julia Booksellers, Ms. Roxanne Coady, who is going to be in conversation with John Grisham today. Thanks for joining us. Take it away, Roxanne.
Thanks, Erica. Hi, everybody. I want to welcome our readers from RJ Julia, our readers from Wesleyan RJ Julia's, and readers from our sister store, Bookhampton on East Hampton, Long Island. I am delighted today. We are joined by John Grisham. As you probably know, he's a lawyer turned mega best-selling author. He's published over 30 books. They have sold over 300 million copies. They've been published in over 40 languages. There have been 9 movies. There's been a TV series. And we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about his absolutely fabulous new book called Camino Winds, which is just a blast. But we'll also cover his time working construction, being an accounting major in Mississippi, his being an activist, and of course his work as the local Little League commissioner in Virginia. So we've got a lot to cover. John, welcome. Oh, we're also going to be broadcasting this for our podcast, Just the Right Book. So there'll be tons and tons of people. John, welcome to all of these different constituents.
Hey, Roxanne, happy to be here. Good seeing you again.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you. John, how are you and your family in this environment?
Well, we're fine. Nobody's sick. We've been lucky. We live in Central Virginia in Charlottesville, and it's a university town. People have taken it very seriously. And then having said that, my son, who's a local lawyer down the street from where I am right now, his secretary came in last Tuesday with a sore throat or something. They asked her to go get tested. She tested positive. So then he and his partner had to get tested. And it came out of nowhere. They both found out this morning, 5 days later, that they are negative, which is great news. They had no symptoms. They felt great, still feel great. But so we had a close call, or we thought we had a close call over the weekend, but not a lot of big numbers here in Central Virginia, in the cities, DC, Richmond, more numbers there, but we're fairly safe here. But these people, I think, we have a huge medical community, a med school here, big hospital, and they took it real serious, real fast, and we've all taken it seriously. So no big numbers, thank God for that. And so far the numbers have held steady, so we're relatively safe.
And still pretty locked down?
Yeah, we're locked down. You see more people out, more restaurants are opening, half capacity. More people are trying to get out and move around. So fingers crossed, we hope that works and doesn't backfire, but people are still pretty cautious around here.
Now, what will happen with your Little League crew?
Oh, we're shut down. We almost got started early in March. We have 500 kids every year in the ballpark, ages 5 through 15, baseball, softball, t-ball. It's a very busy place. It's a lovely place, and that's where I spend a lot of time this time of the year. We pulled the plug back in mid-March and shut it down. We really had to. We had no choice. And so it's really, we had a gorgeous spring here in Central Virginia and no baseball, softball, or t-ball. And it's heartbreaking because some of these kids, for Little
Wait
League,
all year, right?
yeah, and then for these Little League, these kids are not getting any younger. And for Little League baseball players, the age of 12 is pure magic because that's when you're on the small field, you're a good player. And these kids are losing that this year. So there's a lot of interest in when we might start. I don't know if we're going to be able to. The numbers stay down, but we're trying to, and we can't do it until we're released. And then we have to make the decision as a ballpark, do we open back up? The same decision that so many people have to make. Are we going to open back up and run the risk? And so it's kind of a sad time right now.
Yeah. And weren't you going to be like a big time baseball player in your head, in your 8-year-old head?
12-year-old head. When I was 12 years old, I thought I was going to really be good because I was one of the all-stars, whatever that meant back then, and I had big dreams. But you know, we grew up on the streets, the suburbia, with baseball all day long, almost year-round in Mississippi, and we loved the Cardinals, and we all wanted to play for the Cardinals, and we knew we would. We used to argue over who would play what position for the Cardinals, and we grew up, and typical childhood dreams, and I never got close. So I love the game from afar.
So how the hell did you pivot from baseball to accounting?
Well, baseball sure didn't work out, so I had to give up the games and get serious about studying. I decided when I was 20 years old, halfway through college, when I got cut for the final time from a college baseball team, I realized those days were over. I had to get serious about the books, and I decided to get a degree in accounting and go to law school and become a tax lawyer. I don't know where that came from, but tax law was going to be the key to my future, and that didn't work either. When I got to law school, I ditched the tax stuff and realized I really enjoyed the courtroom. And so I decided to become a trial lawyer. And as a young lawyer, I tried a lot of cases. I was in the courtroom all the time and tried many cases, a lot of criminal cases. And I was in a courtroom one day in the summer of 1984. I'd only been out of school for 3 or 4 years. I was barely 30 years old, I guess. And I saw something that was very dramatic. And I was not involved in the case. What I would do as a young lawyer, I'd hang around the courtroom. And if good lawyers were trying their cases, I was going to be there just to watch and try to learn. And I saw something that was very dramatic, a criminal trial. And I became obsessed with this story of a father's revenge over something horrible that happened to his little girl. And the story grew and grew, and I had never written before in my life, never tried to. And I became obsessed with this story of revenge, retribution outside the law. And that prompted me to try to write the story. I'd never written before. And it took 3 years to write my first novel, which eventually became A Time to Kill. That was not the first title. And got a lucky break and got it published in 1989. They printed 5,000 hardback copies, and we couldn't give them away. So the book was a kind of a flop when it came, a total flop when it came out initially. But by then I was in the habit of writing a little bit every day, and I learned the valuable lesson that if you want to succeed at something, if you can do a little bit every day and improve, or whatever it is, it adds up. And so my second book was going to be something far more commercial than the rape of a little girl. I mean, that's a touchy, it's a bad subject. I vowed to write one more book, and if it didn't work, I was going to say farewell to that hobby. I'm losing too much sleep and time. And the second book took 2 years to write, and that was The Firm. When The Firm came out in March of 1991, almost 30 years ago, things changed overnight. It was a dramatic change in my life. I stopped practicing law. I became a full-time writer and never looked back.
So John, one of the things I was thinking about when I thought about the difference between A Time to Kill and The Firm, and I love A Time to Kill, and it made me think about this kind of funny thing that drives one book to succeed and another not. When you look back on it, now obviously Time to Kill started with a pretty tough subject, as you said, the rape of a young kid, but it had all the mystery components, the thriller components that, so when you look back on it, why do you think the firm, which went on to, I mean, just sell what, 7-8 million copies in hardcover, some crazy number. Why do you think the firm hit a chord and Time to Kill didn't work then?
Didn't work then. I think 30 years later.
Now.
Yeah,
because you're John Grisham.
Well, it's a best-selling book of all of them. Time to Kill and The Firm still total have sold more than the other books. Why? I don't know. Obviously, The Firm is more accessible. It's more fun to read. It's an old-fashioned thriller, and it's not about the rape of a child. So that turns a lot of folks off. I don't know. I got a lucky break. You have to have a lucky break somewhere along the way. And when I submitted The Firm to my agent, just after A Time to Kill came out in the summer of '89, my agent wanted me to make a bunch of changes to it, and I didn't want to do that. And we kind of bickered back and forth, and the book just kind of, stayed in his office and didn't go anywhere. And then he submitted the book to a couple of publishers, and they said, no, this is The Firm, in the fall of '89. And then a great lucky break happened to me I knew nothing about. But someone got a copy of The Firm in New York, and they sent it to a Hollywood agent. And he made 20 copies of it and submitted the book to all the big studios. We didn't know anything about it. And he got kind of nervous when they started making offers. And so the first phone call I got was early in 1990 on a Sunday morning. It was my agent in New York. And he said, look, we got to make a decision because we're having an auction for The Firm. And we're down to Paramount Pictures, Universal Pictures, and Disney Touchstone for the movie rights. And I said, well, good morning to you. What happened to the book rights? And he said, we'll talk about that later. He said, I can't really talk to you much now because these three companies are lined up for the final round of bidding. And I said, what are you talking about? And that's how it happened. We sold the film rights to Paramount that morning for the first Sunday in January of 1990, 30 years ago. And then once we had this big book deal that rocked my world, suddenly the publishers wanted to buy it. So the publishers, we had another auction in New York, and Doubleday bought the hardcover, softcover rights to The Firm, and that was another great phone call. I'm still with Doubleday, 40 books later.
Yeah, I know.
Still my publisher. And then to top that off, the following week, my agent took the book abroad. And we began selling the foreign rights, one language at a time. We kept all the foreign rights ourselves. And each week it was a new contract. It was British, German, French. The book marched around the world, and we're getting all these contracts that we certainly were not expecting. It was a phenomenal 2-month period of time when my world was turned upside down. And suddenly we had this book. Then the book came out in March of '91. And after all this hype and hoopla over the book, we were kind of nervous to see if it would actually sell, which a lot of them don't, after all the hype. But The Firm found an audience then and still has that audience.
Yeah, and John, it's a funny thing because we opened in April of '90. RJ Julia is 30 years old. So, the joke I made to you last time and would make again. So I thought that's how book selling worked. A book comes out and we probably sold a couple thousand copies, and we'd been open a year, and I go, I got this.
Yeah.
This is just a layup. But, John, you've spent a lot of your subsequent career supporting book selling, supporting independent booksellers and young writers. What do you think it takes today for someone to turn into a John Grisham? Do you think the world of publishing and book selling has changed so much that it would be too hard to do now?
Tough question. It's certainly changed. Back when I got published, when The Firm came out in March of '91, there the biggest concern then was the rise of the big chains, Barnes and Noble. And this is before the internet. This is before ebooks. This is before all that stuff came about. And there was a great lawsuits between your independent booksellers and the big chains. And there were several big chains back then before they all went away except for Barnes and Noble. So there were all kinds of issues 30 years ago about the future of bookselling. We didn't even see the internet coming.
Right.
We did. But, Roxanne, I go back to what I always say, if there's always going to be a big demand for a good book. And I still believe that. It could be more difficult to get published now. I don't know. If you look at the top 10 best-selling writers in America, there's nobody under 40, probably nobody under 50. So publishing needs the new talent coming out, the new commercial writers, the new mystery and suspense writers who come out and can establish a foothold and come out every year or every other year. You've got to produce to get that reputation. And
John, one of the things that it makes me think about is you must get, I know you've been very supportive of writers, you must get a gazillion letters from young writers wanting you to blurb their book, talk to them. And you do support some of the writers. What do you look for in the quality of a young writer that you might sort of pluck out of the pile and decide to mentor or befriend?
Well, the publishers, obviously, they know what I write. And so they send me those types of books, suspense, maybe a legal thriller or whatever, mystery. They kind of screen that themselves. A lot of them will write me a nice note and say, hey, I got a really promising book about this and that, whatever. Would you take a look? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends on if I have an interest in it. And so it kind of screens itself. But I look at a lot of books, a lot of advanced reading copies, and I blurb a lot of books because I want somebody else to have the chance that I've had. And we're always looking for, again, this is an aging list of best-selling authors, and we need the young talent and it's always going to be a market for a really good commercial book. And it's going to happen. It could be more difficult today because so many bookstores have closed in the last 20 years. When Borders went under, that was 700 stores right there. So many independents have gone under. And now with this, with the pandemic, we don't know what's going to happen to bookstores because you're not open. It's a few are going to hang on. They're going to get stronger, I think, because they're surviving now. But it's pretty frightening. On the other hand, people are reading more. People are at home reading more. And I published this book, Camino Winds, a month ago, and it's holding its own in the marketplace with so many stores closed, and they're pretty excited about that in New York. So
let's talk about this good book, Camino Winds. So it's your second book with Bruce Cable, and it's absolutely the book's just a blast, John. So we have Nelson Keir, I don't know, K-E-R-R.
Nelson Kerr.
Kerr. He apparently is a victim of Hurricane Leo, but then it's looking like he's might have been a victim of a murder. The clue might be in his missing yet unpublished book, and from there the fun begins. So I've got a couple of questions in this book. One is, your bookseller Bruce is a pretty hard partying, drinking, slightly scoundrelly guy. Now, that isn't the way most of us who are independent booksellers think of ourselves. How'd you come up with this type of bookseller, John?
Well, I swear he's totally fictional.
Yeah.
He's not based on anybody.
Has nothing to do with Richard?
Oh, no, not Richard Howarth at Square Books. No, I've never met any bookseller like Bruce Cable. But he stumbled across a treasure trove of first editions when his father died. And he was in the house just after his father died. And he was kind of drifting. He had dropped out of college, and he loved reading and loved writing, loved writers. And he stumbled across these books. And he kept thinking, well, maybe I could do something with these now that I've kind of stolen from my father's estate. And he had the opportunity, he was hanging around a beach town, and he had the opportunity to buy a bookstore. He was looking for something to do. He got a small inheritance, and so he bought the bookstore. He was 22 years old, had no idea what he was doing, and here we go. And so he started the bookstore, and it prospered after a while, and he became, a serious collector of first editions above the table and some rare copies under the table. And he was known in law enforcement. The FBI knew that he was one of a handful of dealers in the country who would dabble in the black market. So he's kind of a roguish character, but
Yeah.
he sure is fun.
He's a black, when you obviously know so much about the business. So as a bookseller, it's fun to read about it. And if you don't know about it, it's a fun way to learn about it. So I don't want to give away too much, but nursing homes become a bit of a problem in this book, which is ironic given the pandemic and what's being discovered about nursing homes. What got you interested in nursing homes as having such a key role in the book?
The plot's totally fictional, and I was looking for some way to some scandal that I could fictionalize and relate it to books. And our hero, Nelson Kerr, who's a writer, who's published 3 or 4 books. He's a best-selling author, former lawyer. And once we realized he's been murdered in the middle of a hurricane, when the police have no interest in, another crime.
Yeah, they're pretty casual.
They're very casual about that. So it becomes an old-fashioned whodunit.
Yeah.
With Bruce and a couple of sidekicks, like playing Sherlock Holmes, trying to find out who would kill our buddy Nelson Kerr and why. And it goes back to a manuscript he's working on, and it's about the nursing home industry, and that's where the real scandal, the drugs, all that kind of stuff, that we can't give away too much of the plot here.
No, we don't want to do that, John, because everybody's got to read this book. There isn't anybody who wouldn't love it. Has it been picked up for a movie or a TV series?
We're not selling the film rights yet to Camino. Camino Island was the first book 3 years ago. Camino Winds, there's a second one now. There'll be a third one probably in a couple of years. I don't want to do a movie, not that we're doing movies anymore, but I don't want to deal with film people until I can see the end of the series.
Yeah.
And that way I don't want somebody else trying to create something I'm trying to create. So no, there's no movie talk yet.
Yeah. So, John, one of the, but we've got a bunch of readers' questions, but when we talked 3 years ago, when you were at RJ Julia and you were on the podcast before, you shared with all of us just how damn disciplined you are about writing books. Like you said, then January 1st, you start a legal thriller, and by June you hand it in, and then in between you're writing young adult books and you're starting the Camino series. And I re-listened to that interview, and one of the things that it made me wonder about, so you turned 65 in February, like almost a grown-up.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the middle of a pandemic, you're quarantined. Have either of those things, you could be just sitting back, right? Probably these 300 million books turn into money somewhere along the way. Have either of these events, the birthday of the pandemic, change how you think about your career, your time, what matters to you? Any of that shift?
No, it's given me more time to do what I enjoy. That's to write. I'm almost finished with the next book. I start January the 1st of every year and try to finish by July the 1st. But I've had so much. I couldn't travel. I can't travel now. So I was supposed to go to 3 or 4 book festivals. One was in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of budget that in my time. So I've had nothing to do but write. So the next book is going to be very thick, which is not always a good thing. It'll be set in Ford County, Mississippi, where I got started, and it's going to be a suspenseful book involving the same characters, and I'm almost finished with it because I'm ahead of schedule. So no, I really haven't I really haven't slowed down. I've found it difficult to read more because I get distracted when I'm not writing. It also is, my wife and I've also looked around and realized that, there are a lot of ways to help people. And we really enjoy doing that. And so we're pretty active with groups trying to feed hungry kids. I mean, the number of hungry kids is going up in this country weekly because of the hard economic times. And so we're very active with groups like that.
I think among the things that daily break our hearts that we watch are those endless lines of cars for hours and hours waiting for food.
Right.
It seems to be getting a little bit better. Are you seeing with your work that there's a better distribution process getting in place?
We're okay here, but I see the same news reports you do that, there are some real trouble spots, but we're okay here. There's plenty of food. Food banks are full. We're volunteering there and helping out there. But you wonder, have we seen the worst of this? That's what's frightening.
That's what's scary, right?
I don't think so. But, again, no one can predict. Nobody knows what's going to happen. All the scientists and experts and doctors are not sure where this thing is going. And the idea that we kind of take our foot off the gas now off the brake now and hit the gas and start opening things up is pretty frightening.
John, do you think about trying, like your book, The Guardian, that came out, was about a wrongful conviction. You've done a lot of work on the Innocence Project. You're very active with them. You were a legislator in Mississippi for 7 years.
7 years, yeah.
7 years. How do you balance being this best-selling writer and an activist, and where you do or don't get involved politically? How do you think about that?
Well, you really have to limit what you want to get involved in. My wife and I are very much involved in a lot of issues. Right now, it's childhood hunger. She's really involved with an outfit called No Kid Hungry. And so we are worried about that and concerned about that. And we do a lot of work with No Kid Hungry. I'm on the board of the Innocence Project in New York and have been for 10 years. And we work every day to get innocent people out of prison. There are thousands and thousands of innocent people in prison serving long terms for somebody else's crime. And we keep banging that drum, and we get them out slowly, 360 so far. So I'm pretty active with that. We're active with my youth group, youth baseball, things like that. But you have to pick. You can't solve the world's problems. You got to pick out.
So you pick. You pick.
Yeah, you got to pick and choose and try to make a difference there. But childhood hunger right now is a big issue with us.
Well, we're lucky you and Renee are doing that.
Well, we feel lucky to be able to do it because a lot of folks would love to do it and don't have the means to do it. We're very concerned about hungry kids.
Yeah, it does break your heart. So here's a couple of questions from our listeners, because I know we're going to lose you in just a few minutes. One of our guests wants to know why you never continued your political career.
I never really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the first campaign, knocking on doors and trying to get more votes than my opponent. The idea of a challenge, or he was an old incumbent, a contest, the actual thrill of battle was fun. Who's going to get the most votes? Once I got the job, I couldn't stand it. It was serving the state legislature in Mississippi was not at all worthwhile. I just did not enjoy it. And I was 3 hours away from home. My young wife is having babies. I'm missing, I was homesick the whole time, and I never took the public.
Not for you.
Well, and also I just never got I never could accept the fact that people, once they vote for you, they think they own you. And they would call at all hours and stop by the house and write letters. And I got to where I couldn't stand the voters. And so
that's not good.
When you're a politician and you don't like the voters, it's time to get out of
politics. That's not good, John. It's definitely not good. So what other legal crime fiction do you like, and by whom?
I got Scott Turow's latest novel last week. Scott inspired me immensely in 1987 when Presumed Innocent came out, his first big book, his first novel. He was a big firm lawyer in Chicago, and he turned the world upside down with that book. Big book, big movie, and that was wildly inspirational for me. I was almost finished with The Time to Kill, and struggling to get finished, and not sure I wanted to finish it. And Scott was a big inspiration. Yeah, I read a lot of other lawyers who write. I enjoy mystery. I enjoy suspense. I enjoy John Le Carre is one of my favorite all-time writers. I read all of his books. So yeah, I mean, I'm all over the map, but I do love suspense.
Yeah, and which one of our guests want to know which one of those books behind you is your favorite?
I'm not even sure what's back there. I'm not even sure. I don't want to turn around and look. Okay.
Yeah, that's probably not a good idea. One other question that I was thinking about: what got you writing YA books?
It happened with one conversation about 10 years ago. My daughter was a brand new school teacher, a fifth grade teacher. And she was talking about she was emphasizing reading. And she asked me if I could write suspense for kids. She said, I'm having a hard time finding, there are all kinds of kids' books, mystery and fantasy, whatever. But she said, I'm having a hard time finding good suspense for kids. And that was where the idea was born, about this 13-year-old kid who thinks he's a lawyer because both of his parents are lawyers. And so he dreams of being a lawyer. And that was Theodore Boone. And that was how the series was created, a conversation with my daughter.
And kids love it.
It's been very popular. I'm trying to get the story now for number 8. I've written 7, and they've done well.
So John, in closing, there's a couple of things I would like to thank you for. One is your support of independent booksellers. It's meant a lot to us when, you came to RJ Julia a few years ago after you hadn't been on the road for a long time. I know you were going to get back on the road, and you've taken the time to do over, a couple of or few dozen of these interviews and taking the time to do that. But particularly your advocacy work, because it does take well-known people who can get attention effectuating change. Sometimes it seems like the politicians, for whatever reason, aren't the ones to get it done. But so I want to thank you for that. But really, at the moment, what I'd like to thank you for is writing Camino Winds. I want to remind everybody to buy it, give it as a Father's Day present, a belated Mother's Day present, it's just so much fun. It's the classic, can't put it down. And I hope you have fun touring around, talking about it.
One of these days we'll be back on the real road and have a lot of fun. I can't wait to come see you again.
Yeah, John, thanks so much for your time. Thanks all of you for joining us.
Thank you. Can't wait to see you live and in person. Take care.
Bye-bye.